Hello, welcome to BikeSocial, and you probably can't tell from there, but it's about 2 degrees, it's really grey out. Anyway, regardless, every day is a brilliant day when you're on a motorbike. Right, lads? Hey! Today, the three of us, we've got Andy Shewbridge, our partnerships manager from BikeSocial, road testing superstar Martin Fitz-Gibbons, and myself. We've got 3 sports tourers of the era. We've got Honda's NT1100, that's been updated for 2025, Kawasaki's Ninja 1100 SX SE, and we've got Suzuki's GSX-S1000GT, one of the best sellers from the last 3 years. So throughout the course of today, we are going to try them on all sorts of different roads. We're going to try and get through most of, if not all of, a tank of fuel, and we're going to come back and we're going to dissect it all for you. Right then, boys, a tank full of fuel later, and here we are with our executive boards.
Very professional.
I feel like a newsreader. SXSE, GT, DES, they call it, don't they? The DCT electronic suspension. So DES, GT, and it sounds like members of a 90s boy band, really. The sports touring, it's kind of had a bit of a, well, I didn't even realise it, but more of a sort of a resurgence, hasn't it, over the last decade? Well, how do you qualify? What is a sports tourer? Where's this class come from?
What is a sports tourer? I mean, I guess the clue's in the name, really. It's kind of taking 2 disparate worlds of exciting, dynamic, fast, hard-edge sports bikes and kind of comfortable, practical tourers and trying to create a bike that can do a bit of both. I guess they kind of go back to the late 70s. They kind of really took a leap forwards with the iconic Honda VFR 750 in the 80s. In the 90s, everyone started making them. And then by the 2000s, you had Ducati getting in with ST2s and ST3s and 4s. You had Triumph with the Sprint ST. But then after that, they kind of started falling out of favour slightly. I don't know whether that was because we changed as riders or because adventure bikes kind of took their place. But 5 or 10 years ago, there weren't that many sports tourers on the market. And now here we are with 3 of them.
Yeah, of course. So the GT, the Suzuki's been around since 2022, and the other 2, in some vein, have been around for a similar amount of time, but they have been, again, upgraded or updated for this year. Shall we start with the price? So between the 3 of them, there's not a massive difference, is there, with how we've been handed them, how we've been testing them today with their panniers and their different forms. There's not a great deal of difference in the price, though, right?
Not really, given that we've, the Suzuki we've got here is in the most affordable, most basic spec. And at £12,899, that's our kind of affordable option. The Honda and Kawasaki that we've been sent are in kind of more flagship specs, aren't they, really?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
the Honda we have with the DCT gearbox and the new for 2025 electronic suspension. So that's the flagship NT, and that's just over 14,099. So we've kind of gone from 13-ish to 14-ish. And then the most expensive is the Kawasaki. This is the new SE version with some fancy chassis bits. And it's not just that, it's the SE Tourer, which has panniers and heated grips and a delightful USB charger and some other questionable accessories. But that comes in at just over 15,000, 15,171. So kind of 13-ish, 14-ish, 15-ish. It's not a huge amount of difference given there's a kind of big difference in some of the aspects of them.
Yeah.
We're recording this towards the sort of middle to the end of February and up until the end of March. Up until the end of March, isn't it? There's a 0% deal that Suzuki are offering, which we really must talk about because it's very attractive, isn't it, on this bike? 0% until the end of March on a PCP deal.
Yeah, and the end result of that is that for the similar deposit, the Suzuki is about half the price of the Kawasaki in terms of monthly payments.
Very attractive.
Astonishing.
So, as part of this conclusion then, we've kind of dived into the price already. Now, price and value are two different things, aren't they? Very much so.
Definitely.
What do you reckon, Andy? We'll get to the kind of the crux or the resulting question much later on about which one would you buy, which one would you want in your garage. And actually, it's a good point because you ride an S1000 XR, don't you? You own an XR.
Yeah, I do. So I've had that for about 5 years now. So for me, I'm genuinely thinking, what do I get next? Because it's a great bike, the XR, but it's really just fancying the change more than anything. So this is really ideal for me just to get a comparison of what's out there in terms of sports tourers.
Are these three on your shopping list?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, don't want to give too much away, but yeah. Great, they're all great bikes. Like, don't get me wrong, they're all fantastic, and they're all ideal for touring, obviously. In terms of value, though, going back to the question, I think obviously the standout one is the Suzuki for me.
But there's lots of bits and pieces, aren't there? There's lots of rider arrays and equipment, and again, we'll kind of move on to the differences or the detail of that in due course. But actually, when you look at them, you've done this amazing cheat sheet here, but you look at the detail of what is available on each of these bikes, and they do start. You kind of see where that price differential becomes, don't you?
You do. But I think the key thing is that they're all quite affordable. Like, I'm not pretending that 14 grand isn't a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But what we don't have here is three bikes that add up to 60 grand. You know, we don't have a bunch of high-end flagship adventure bikes that set you back 25 grand each.
Yeah,
you were saying about quite liking the 1300 GS that you've had.
I spent some time on that this year, and it's a fantastic bike, but I can't, justify that sort of spend. As many people would be in that boat, I'm sure.
But these kind of come down at slightly more everyman prices, don't they?
Yeah.
And they're a lot of bike for the money.
Should we talk about engine and performance next?
Yes.
There's plenty of that too.
Yeah, well, do you want to kick off then, Mofka? So we've got, I wanted to call this the litre class sports tours, but then of course everyone's going to go, hang on a minute, two of them not even are above a litre now, aren't they? And they're the two that have been, the Ninja, the Kawasaki's been updated and it's got a bigger capacity engine.
It has. It's gone up to 1100 from 1000. I think in nerdy terms it's gone up from 1043 to 1099. And they've done that with a slightly longer stroke. But the unusual thing, we're kind of used to manufacturers going bigger engines year after year after year. The slightly unusual thing is that the Ninja 1100 is actually slightly less powerful than the Ninja 1000 it replaces, which from a sort of superficial perspective seems like a bit of a crazy move. It's gone from 140 horsepower to 134.
Negligible, isn't it, in real world terms?
And then you ride them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
You
it's still
could
got.
not-
You wouldn't know that, would you?
You certainly wouldn't.
You don't use all 134 and go, I wish I got 140.
No, absolutely not, especially not on that engine.
Did it make a difference when they reduced the maximum power as to where it comes in, or?
Well, what Kawasaki's done, by kind of making a longer stroke engine, they've shifted the whole power curve lower down in the revs. So the torque is increased and the peak torque is made at lower revs, and that 134 horsepower peak, although it's slightly lower, is now also made at lower revs. And I think you can really tell it when you ride it. It's such an easy-going engine. There's no effort demanded of you. You don't need to scream it to the red line to make progress. It's smooth. It sounds pretty good once you get going, and it just makes your life easy, doesn't it? It just whisks you along with effortless speed.
What do you reckon, Chewy?
Yeah, I agree completely. It's unbelievable performance, really. And I was surprised when I was looking at the sheets earlier, 134, it feels like a lot more than that to me.
Well, look, it's 3 for 3 because I'm with you. I think it's, of the three bikes, I think it's probably the easiest bike to use. Sorry, the easiest engine to get on with. Because we did sections of sort of, a lot slower riding with towns. The way in which the engine performs at low RPM, even the throttle connection is really sweet. Go from the Kawasaki to the Suzuki and it gets a little bit clunkier, just at sort of, at what would you call it, off throttle to on throttle, that sort of, that
transition.
First couple of degrees. It's a lot smoother than the Kawasaki. I was really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah,
It's really good.
it's a great engine.
Yeah.
And on paper, the Suzuki is the one that should be the monster of the class, isn't it? With 150 horsepower.
Yes, definitely.
That's the one that we should be getting on and talking about how it rips your arms off. It feels the closest to a pure superbike engine to me. It is derived from the iconic GSX-R1000 K5 engine. And yeah, it's the most powerful here, but it's also the one that kind of requires the most put into it to get power out of it, if you know what I mean. All the peaks come up at much higher revs. I think it revs on to like nearly 12,000 RPM, whereas the Kawasaki's done by kind of 11-ish and the Honda's done by 8, I think. It's got a great kind of sporting character to it, and it sounds fantastic, but it's not quite as willing as the Kawasaki. It kind of requires you to put a bit more into it.
You've got to be patient with it, I think, haven't you? If you do want to wind it on, it's there. You kind of got to wait for it. It's almost like it needs to be unlocked, doesn't it? You wait at the bottom. If you, not that you really want to on these bikes, you don't just crack it open and catapult yourself. What you can do is just be patient with it at low RPM, and then it'll come and it'll come and it'll come, and it'll still keep going. And as you say, it screams all the way to double 1,000 RPM. But of course, the two inline fours and a parallel twin. The Hondas, it's a nice thing to listen to, isn't it?
Sounds good. Surprised me, to be fair.
And it is just like an Africa Twin with 17-inch wheels.
Yeah, I think the engine is exactly the same as it is in the Africa Twin. So 1084cc parallel twin. Again, quite a long stroke engine, a real low revving engine. You don't need to do anything. You certainly don't need to work it. It almost works against you if you try and work it too hard. It's got the same torque as the Kawasaki, but it's delivered at even lower revs. So it kind of just offers all the performance up to you and says, there you are, have your pick. You don't need to do anything for it. But that peak power is just over 100 horsepower. It is less exciting, it is less thrilling than the two inline fours, isn't it?
Agreed, yeah.
I wouldn't say any slower.
You're right, it's not left wanting. It certainly wasn't today, because we swapped about, of course, during the course of the day, so we had equal time on each bike. But the person on the Honda was never left behind.
No.
But then, you've got to take into consideration all the other elements of creating this sort of performance nut of a bike, from tyres to suspension to road conditions to all the rest of it. But
Which I guess on the Honda, you kind of have to get into the tricky topic of its DCT.
Yes, I was going to mention that. How did you find it? Because you came...
trying to come with no preconceptions, because I've ridden the DCT before and I don't really get on with it, to be quite honest. So, but I thought, no, give it a go today. Enjoyed riding it, and it is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Round town, making life easy for you, it's brilliant. The thing that I struggle with is that lack of control from gearing. So, i.e., when you're going into a corner, you want to be in a certain gear, and it takes away that predictability of it for me. Sometimes it doesn't do what you expect it to do.
Did you have it in the D or the S?
I had it in the D. That's a good question, because the D for me is really painful, because it just, going up to 30 miles an hour, it will bang you up to fifth gear straight away, like instantly, fairly quickly. That's not great for me. But when you put it into the DS, is it? DS?
Yeah, I think it's just called S, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's 3 versions of S.
That was much better. I appreciate you can put it into the manual bit and you do it all on the shift buttons. But for me, that was just so tucked away under your horn, your indicators and whatever. It's not that easy to... I'm sure you'll get used to it if you owned one and ride it a lot. But for me, it was just a bit too fiddly. And I want that control from the gears, really.
How are you getting on with it?
I quite like it. It's growing on me. I remember first riding DCT the year it came out in 2010.
Yeah, 15 years.
And the shift was really good, but the timing was very awkward. And I think over the years, Honda have put a lot of effort into refining it and trying to make it feel more natural. And I think they've had some success. But yes, putting it in sport mode definitely makes it feel a bit more natural. It kind of holds on to the gears in the way that riders, experienced riders would kind of expect to. But you're right, if you want absolute certainty of what gear you're going to be in and when, you do need to be in full manual mode. One thing they have added for this year in an attempt to try and help it feel more natural is they've added an IMU, so a lean sensor. And the idea is that now the DCT system listens to what the lean angle of the bike is, so it should reduce the amount of time that it does something slightly unsettling, like trying to change up or down a gear while you leant over. But you said it wasn't...
I had one earlier which caught me out a bit, because obviously conditions aren't ideal today for riding bikes, sketchy surfaces in places. Just coming out of the corner, getting it onto throttle, and it just dropped a gear on me, because obviously the rate of throttle I was asking was more than it was expecting in third. So it dropped second, and it's just one of those things that unsettled the bike, and I thought, just for that split second. But it was fine, no issue.
Was that in S mode?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Maybe that's the sort of the nature of that particular mode. It just wants to, because I had exactly the same. By the way.
Did you?
We haven't talked about that until now, but I just want.
The only other issue with it for me was when you ask for throttle, it's almost like the old-fashioned automatic car kickdown. That's the best way for me to describe it. You sort of, it cuts the power and then all of a sudden it goes again, and you don't feel like fully in control of it.
Honda sell a lot of DCT NTs, though, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Massive seller.
You told me a stat earlier on, it was almost 2/3 across
I think
Europe.
by their own claim, it's about 2/3 of NT buyers go for the DCT version. Yeah, I quite like it, but I can totally accept it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's nice that they don't force it on you just yet.
I'm pleased that we had it to test today. I'm pleased that it was an option for us to have a go at. So we could talk about it, but also I certainly wanted to refresh myself with it. I'd not ridden the previous gen NT, but had spent a lot of time on Africa Twin variations. So I was keen to have a go on this as a sort of a sporty Africa Twin in inverted commas, but also with the DCT and sort of the latest advancement of that. I felt as though, other than that one occasion, it didn't interfere with my riding. I did try it in D and I did try it in S, and as part of the test, I just wanted to see what the differences was. And I'm glad. Would I buy the NT with a DCT? Yeah, probably, because I think it's just so it just takes a lot of
Makes life easy, doesn't it?
the additional I
Yeah.
don't know, rider input. Maybe it's just age and I'm getting lazier. I don't know. What's next? We've got handling, suspension and weight. Now, interesting because, of course, we've got the electronic suspension now on the NT. Chewy, any thoughts on that? Did you, again, just for the view, we had some horrific roads, didn't we?
Yeah.
Boy, you know how to pick a test route, Michael.
Yeah, deliberately so, because we wanted to test them out, but there was some real switch.
I was going to say, for me, that it just handled everything really well in terms of the bumps and humps, and fantastic, really, and probably the most capable of the three behind us in terms of the road conditions we had today. And there were some bumpy elements to it, as we all know. It was so good, you can't really can't fault it.
I did adjust the preload on it because I think I was the last on the NT, so I don't know if either of you had mucked about with it, but I think it was on because there's single rider, two rider, and then two rider with luggage, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think they're the sort of the three presets.
Yeah.
It was definitely on the middle one, and I changed it to the last one. Again, deliberately knowing that there was a particularly bumpy section coming up, and it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, you could almost have a cup of tea out of an old-fashioned tea, and then you wouldn't spill it. It's just, I thought it was very, very good. How did you get on?
I think it is the best of the three at bump absorption, and there were a lot of bumps today, for sure. Yeah, it's very stable, it's very planted. For the first go at semi-active suspension on the NT, I think it's pretty good. My slight beef with it, and it might be a small thing, but I couldn't find a way of changing the damping setting while you're riding. So when we switched from kind of really bumpy roads where you want the suspension to become nice and plush and soft, and when that ended and we were on some kind of quite fast A roads where you want a bit more support from the suspension, there's not like a thing you can push or like on a BMW you'd press a button and it would switch between dynamic and road. And all of a sudden the bike tightens up and it's more precise and it steers better. I couldn't find a way of making that damping switch on the go. So if you're happy with how it comes or whatever setting it was in, it's great, but it still feels a little bit behind some of the really premium European semi-active stuff. And also that preload. The clever kids are now on auto self-leveling, so the bike kind of weighs you, don't take it personally, as you're riding, and adjust the preload to suit, just half a step behind the best of the best. But it is still very good. Certainly better, ride quality-wise, than the Suzuki, which I think discreetly and generously you'd say has a sporting setup.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it was always going to be my final conclusion to this is you've definitely got a sportier end of sports tourer and a tourier end of sports tourer. There's of that range, but certainly the suspension is the obvious element to that gauge.
Yes, on the Suzuki it's kind of all manually adjustable. There's nothing. It's not bad suspension by any means. I'd kind of describe it as mid-range suspension. But the bump absorption and the ride quality is clearly not that bike's priority.
No.
It's kind of feels set up quite stiff, I guess, for handling and poise rather than banging along a subsided Fenland Road.
Yeah, it wouldn't be even of these three bikes. If you went on that test route again, it wouldn't be the choice, would it?
Definitely
Based on comfort and suspension alone.
But then I guess somewhere in the middle, fittingly enough,
Yeah.
lies the Kawasaki.
Yeah. It was the first bike that I rode today, and I got ever so well with it. I thought how comfortable it was. Not just about riding position or stretch to the bars or whatever, but actually how it did cope with the roads. And again, the roads were not in prime condition for us to go barreling in and on the brakes and to testing the suspension that way or kind of its sportier capabilities. But in terms of comfort, yeah, I thought it was mega.
Yeah,
really,
really good.
nice. Am I right in thinking the new version has got an Öhlins shock and the previous one didn't? Is that right?
So this is part and parcel of the premium SE version. Because the SE comes with an Öhlins shock, which sounds very fancy, and the ride quality is pretty good. But I would say there are Öhlins shocks and there are Öhlins shocks. And it has a remote preload adjuster, but only kind of single damping adjuster. It's not like one of those fancy twin tube
TTX stuff.
Yeah, it's not the kind of stuff that MotoGP. It's not the Öhlins that MotoGP riders want. It's good, and I have no doubts that it's better than or offers a nicer ride than the standard shock. But it's not like Öhlins. It's kind of Öhlins.
Well, let's go to sort of equipment and rider aids then, because there's a lot of electronics on show here, and I might kick us off with screens, the actual the displays. Honda has still got this dual thing going on, haven't they, with the ye olde digital thing, and it still takes forever and a day when you turn the bike on.
That was going to be one comment from me. By the time we set off, you guys are up the road and the dash hasn't come up properly still, so it does take a long time.
Yeah, I didn't understand the reason why there's this split dash thing, and it took someone far smarter than me to explain that it's because the NT's set up for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto.
Okay.
And so if you have, I don't know, maps or something displayed on the big colour TFT dash, that you still want to have something showing you your speed. So apparently that's the reason behind that. And given we didn't get into CarPlay or phone syncing today, it felt a bit needless. But the Honda's got quite a big colour dash. It's just very busy.
There's a lot going on.
Lots of little icons and dials and things. It's constantly telling you what level out of something your traction is and your engine braking is, and there's a lot going on. I think they could kind of simplify it down a bit. There are options to have a different display, but it's one of those things that's like, you shouldn't need to correct a problem in the first place. It would just be better to have a simpler dash. But it's very, it's very easy to read, I guess.
The Kawasaki's, it feels old though, doesn't it? Don't you think?
I think so. In terms of the modern day graphic stuff that you get.
They've updated the bike, and it's a lovely, lovely thing, but it just feels old. Even the switchgear, it could feel a lot more premium. And I appreciate that we've already talked about you could be out there with your multistradas or your 1250 RSs, but that's £10,000 more than that. And I understand the difference between the two. On this Tourer model, you get the phone holder, don't you? Is it SP Connect? I don't know. By the by, but it doesn't half get in the way.
Yes, there are some accessories, and it feels like someone's just sort of stuck them on afterwards, isn't it? They're not neatly integrated.
Not at all.
There's a USB-C, isn't there? And it looks like it's just someone's stuck a lump of blue tack on the top there.
You can't actually see the controls on the bar underneath it. It covers, so you can't see your cruise control and all that stuff as well. So it is completely in the way.
I think it's a bit of a shame because it kind of slightly undermines the Kawasaki's premium thing. This is supposed to be the SE version with the lush Öhlins and the fancy Brembos and the green paintwork. You can't have green paintwork unless you have the SE model. Right. But you're right, the dash is a bit small, and then these kind of slightly tacked on accessories, those two things start to make it feel a bit less than premium.
Easy to read enough, though. The screen.
Oh yeah, definitely, very clear.
You just haven't got as many options. Every car, every bike these days seems to have got lots of options, and that for those who don't like options, it's fine then, isn't it? It tells you what you need to know. The Suzuki's is okay, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually quite like the Suzuki's dash. Yeah. It's got a good size to it. It's very easy to see what you're doing. The rev counter is kind of beautifully illustrated. It's quite a nice dash.
Yeah.
Good thing.
What else has it got? So the quick shifters comes as standard on obviously the non-DCT bike, but both the Kawasaki and the Suzuki. And again, I think we all agreed that they were both very good systems, weren't we?
They're all both two-way quick shifters, and they certainly don't feel like race developed. They feel kind of road developed. So you can use them at mid revs, part throttle position, and they kind of slice through butter, really, don't they? Up
really
and down
good.
the box on
Really
both
good.
bikes. So no complaints on that. And how's the Honda's quick shifter?
Smooth.
I think it's even smoother.
But what's good about the Kawasaki and the Suzuki is you can do, I think modern day quick shifters, you mentioned it earlier on, you can, now how do I describe this? So even if you're off throttle, you can still change up. And if you're on throttle, you can still change down. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think I had success with that on the Kawasaki today. I can't remember whether the Suzuki does or doesn't, but I still think they are very good quick shifters. But if we're going to be ultra picky, there is perhaps just a tiny little bit of room for improvement there. But
what about other rider rates? What else have we got on here? We've got heated grips, necessary on a day like today.
It's funny how you came to heated grips before traction control and IMUs.
Yeah, heated grips on the Honda. I think we all agreed, excellent.
Really good.
Heated grips on the Kawasaki,
The
makes
thing
it useless.
on the Honda with the hand heat was it hasn't got hand guards, so I thought that might be a problem today, but it's got those little wings at the front. And I found the wind protection was really good on it.
Yeah, we'll come on to screens in just a second, but yeah, you're right. Actually, and something I noticed first thing this morning, as theoretically touring bikes, not one of these three has got hand guards, which I think is a bit of an odd one. But yeah, heated grips, they are an accessory. I'm going to keep going on about heated grips, by the way.
You're going to keep coming back to
They're an
it.
accessory on the Suzuki, which I think is £300. They're average on the Kawasaki, and they're very, very good on the Honda.
Yeah, I didn't really have any problem with the heat levels. I just find on both bikes, it's not intuitive to operate them.
Definitely.
So on the Honda, you have to kind of faff between a button by your right finger and then a toggle switch by your left finger to make the heated grips work. And on the Kawasaki, you have to push a button on the grip itself and then watch while it flashes yellow lights at you to count how many flashes it has to tell you what heat setting it's on. There's kind of no display on the dash.
Yeah.
Again, I just feel like they could be more intuitive.
And as tourers, I think the one thing that people who are watching this on YouTube will talk about is centre stand. And only one of these three bikes has a centre stand, even as an option.
The super sensible Honda comes with a centre stand, and the other two can't have them.
Yeah, they're not even options.
Would that be a deal breaker for you, Andy?
Not at all. I don't know. Not really. I don't really. Obviously, for a bit of maintenance and stuff, it's nice to put it up on a centre stand, but it's not an issue for me.
I'm with you. And I don't understand necessarily why it has become such a big bugbear for people.
You've clearly never found yourself in the south of France with a 1,000-mile-old chain needing to put a bit of lube on it.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy to be proved wrong and to be berated for that.
Well, as you were saying that they run from kind of sporty to tourer-y, so too do their screen adjustments. Like the Suzuki doesn't have any screen adjustment, and it's quite a low screen. I didn't have any turbulence or buffeting from it, but it feels like the kind of least wind protection. The Kawasaki goes sort of halfway between. You can push a button within the cockpit and then move the screen through 3 or 4 positions. It kind of adds a little bit of height. I think that might be a touring screen on it. I'm not sure. But
I think it's as part of the tourer,
pack,
but I think it's just a smoke screen as opposed to a higher touring screen. But yeah, four settings, but you need both hands to do it, don't you?
one to push the button down and one to move the screen. But I found it better or best in the most upright position for wind protection, which is the mistake I made with the NT of assuming that cranking the screen up to the full height would give you wind protection along the lines of Pan-Europeans and Deauvilles and stuff. But it doesn't, does it, Michael?
Not at all. No, I likened it to having Woody Woodpecker hammering at your skull. It was so much turbulence. Is that the best way to describe it, turbulence? Because it was awful. I mean, again, just so you guys know, I rode the Kawasaki first. I tried it in a couple of different positions, but I had my AGV on, which has a peak. And, I had to take the peak off. I didn't have to, but I did, chose to, just to kind of feel what it's like without one. And then, get on the Honda, I thought, same as you. I thought, right, I'll have a go at that. and within half a mile was just fighting to get the damn thing down again.
It's literally that quick, isn't it? You kind of get out, you get onto the road, you get up to speed, and you just think, what's gone wrong here? And then you have to adjust the screen down a couple of clicks to kind of get a bit of peace and quiet. And that's not the easiest process in the world either. But once you do get it down into a kind of a mid-range position, I think the Honda does have the best weather protection. It's kind of a wide screen, and those little deflectors,
that's right, really
they kind of contribute in the biggest bodywork as well. So for wind protection is the Honda once you've got that screen height sorted.
Boys, one thing we did notice is the differential between tyres here. We've got 3 different tyres, 3 different brands, haven't we? Again, with the sporty to the tourer-y, we've got 3 different sort of qualities and types. So Dunlop, Sport Max, I've already forgotten the rest of it.
Road Sport, I think it might be. Road Sport 2. Whatever they're called, I'm not a fan. I don't think that the OE tyres on the GSX-S1000GT are its strong point. In fact, I think especially when it's kind of cold and a bit slimy and a bit damp underfoot, it sort of hobbles the bike in a way that's a bit unfair, really. Feels a bit like you're doing a bit of a disservice. Like you're trying to, I don't know, sprint in hobnail boots or something. It's just not, they don't instill loads of confidence. Now, I have ridden this bike a couple of years ago on a 1,000-mile tour in the middle of summer up in the north of England, and it was lovely. I think once the tyres are kind of warm and grippy, they're good, but they do really struggle in these conditions today, which, I don't know, did you find the same?
100%. When I started on the Suzuki, it was quite dry. And then it's the only little bit of rain we had all day, really. But so the road got quite greasy quite quickly. And I just found myself almost tiptoeing around corners because as soon as I was coming out of the corner, asking for the gas, it was literally spinning up. So, and I do think, I'm sure they're a good tyre, but in these cold temperatures, they're just not performing for me.
Now, I rode the Suzuki third out of the 3 of us. Whether they'd warmed up a bit, whether they'd gone through a heat cycle, I don't know. I didn't feel as though they were that bad, but what I did do is notice that you boys were very unconfident on them.
It's definitely a consequence of the conditions, right? If you ride a lot in really cold, wet conditions, they're not the best tyre.
Exactly.
I would much rather be on the Hondas, excellent Metzler Road Techs, which feel, I mean, jumping from the Suzuki to the Honda in the same conditions feels like, I don't know, like you've got slicks on or something. It feels incredible.
Yeah.
It feels so much more connected to the road. I feel kind of like something's kind of biting into the tarmac rather than just skimming over the top of it.
So they're Road Tech 01 SCs, aren't they? And they're very, very good. Yeah, they definitely look like more of a touring tyre, but what you need in a tyre is to keep upright and to instill that confidence. And I felt at home on them. I think that we talked about suspension and road holding earlier on, and I think that part and parcel of that is the qualities of the tyre.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think sometimes people use touring tyre as a kind of a criticism. Well, that's on sports tyres and that's only on touring tyres. But for today, I'd much rather be on touring tyres, absolutely. Then the Kawasaki's on...
S23 Bridgestones.
Are they?
Yeah.
Is that new? I think it is. I thought they did pretty well in the conditions today. Standard tyres on Kawasaki Sports Tourers hasn't been a strong point in the past. Going back to Z1000SXs, they came on some slightly unhelpful rubber, but it does feel like this is a big improvement on certainly the Z1000SX.
Yeah.
I think knowing what my preconception of an S23 Bridgestone is that it's more of the sporty tyre. It doesn't, when you compare you line all 3 up together, it didn't look particularly as sporty as the Suzuki's. But again, no problems, no issues. Perhaps because again we were riding to the conditions. But again, no issues, no worries about that. Shall we move on to tank size, tank range and fuel economy? Mr. Mathematician Mufter.
Shall I get my numbers out for you?
Could you?
Well, on paper, the tank sizes aren't that different. The 2 inline-4s both have 19-litre tanks, and the sensible touring Honda has a big 20.4-litre tank. So you would think that there shouldn't be too much of a difference in range, but the rate they drink that fuel is quite different.
Can I interrupt? I
Please.
just want to talk about weight, actually.
Okay.
Just again, it's relevant to this
yeah.
point, isn't it? Here, not necessarily to handling, but with the purpose of economy in mind, because there's quite a big difference between the Suzuki and the Honda, isn't there? There's about
Yeah,
20,
the Suzuki's
25.
the lightest here by quite a bit. Yeah. It is, he says, checking his
226,
pre-prepared,
is it?
226 kilos with a full tank. So it's pretty all right. Yeah. It certainly sets the benchmark for the other two. The Kawasaki comes in at 234, only a little bit heavier, although I suspect that's probably for a version without the panniers and some of the bits. The chunker of the group is the Honda, which is 249 kilos without the panniers and 260 something with the panniers. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, even though that is a 35 kilo difference, it's not like it makes the Honda a worse bike in any way. I don't think.
No.
I mean, the ride quality is still very good. It still goes into corners really nicely.
With that in mind, how did it perform from an economy?
Well, surprising, given it is lugging around the biggest amount of lard, it was by far and away the most frugal. So the two inline fours both returned a tested kind of 38 mpg, and the Honda was far more parsimonious with 48 mpg.
Brilliant.
So that's why the Suzuki's fuel light was on, and the Honda still said it had 80 miles left to go.
Because I was on the Suzuki at the time, and it started flashing. I think that we'd only covered about 125 miles or something like that. Surprising, again, for a touring bike to have its light flashing at that kind of range.
Symptomatic of its sportiness, I
Yes,
think.
exactly.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. One thing we haven't mentioned in the sort of the comfort section was about it, sort of, you know, the position of the rider, and also, you know, how we think it might be for carrying a passenger. I know you boys were playing around in the garage a bit earlier on. Any preference in terms of comfort?
Yes, quite a bit.
Is it obvious? Are we all?
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
is. I think the Honda is the most
Yeah, if
comfortable.
you're going to do massive miles and across Europe or whatever touring, I think that's what you'd go on, isn't it? Probably
How tall are you?
6'2".
5'9".
And I'm 6 foot, so
Okay.
there's a bit of a difference between us.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think
yeah.
we all kind of concur that we didn't cover massive miles today, but there was enough for us to get a feel for that sort of that old hip to knee to foot.
Exactly.
And then you boys tried out with it as a pillion, didn't you?
Yeah, again, it's not going to surprise you. It's not going to blow your mind, but I think the Honda is probably the most comfortable for a pillion. When I was sat on the back, I felt like I was kind of sat lower down behind Andy, probably a bit better shielded. The seat feels the kind of widest and most comfortable, and the grab handles feel big and sturdy. Probably next would be the Kawasaki, which has a slightly wider pillion seat than the Suzuki, and probably kind of slightly sturdier pillion handles as well. So yeah, I think the Honda is the most comfortable, the biggest seat. It's kind of got a nice pullback handlebar, and I'd say the Suzuki is probably, unsurprisingly, the sportiest of the three.
It's a common theme, isn't it? But even with the panniers, because we left the panniers on both the Honda and the Kawasaki, didn't we? So in terms of access, or they're a bit in the way, or
Yeah, I think it is always slightly trickier to get on the back of a bike with panniers, and I guess that's one thing in the Suzuki's favour today.
but of course you can buy panniers, can't you?
Of course you can.
For an extra
They would love to sell you.
£1,100 option.
They are some expensive panniers, yes.
So, Mr. Shewbridge,
Yes.
as you're in the market for a sports tourer, and if you were to be looking at one of these three options, which option might it be?
Kawasaki for me.
Yeah?
It was. I think we touched on it earlier. The performance is so good, the engine's so good, gear changes, handling, brakes, all round package really. The only downside for it for me was a little bit on foot position. There was something getting in the way of my heel, just for people's reference.
It wasn't the pillion footrest, was it?
It was there's a little sort of knobbly bit underneath that pillion foot peg, which just for me was just a bit annoying as I was trying to move my foot around. But yeah, that'd be the one that I'd go for out of the three. Great bike.
So if you're laying your own money, have you got a preference?
Very much so. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Andy. The Ninja 1100 is the best sports tourer. And I think it comes back to that thing we said at the beginning. If a sports tourer is supposed to bring together the world of sports and touring, I think the Suzuki makes a good case for feeling like the most authentically sporty, in that it has the most power and it kind of delivers it in the most kind of aggressive, hard-edged way. And the Honda is the comfiest and uses the least fuel and has the best wind protection. That is the most sports, that is the most tourer. But the Kawasaki brings those two things together in a really convincing way. That is the best sports tourer of the three bikes for me.
All I would be doing is repeating what you boys have just said. So I'm with you. The Suzuki is definitely a more comfortable sports bike, and the Kawasaki is it kind of covers the niche that we're talking about the best.
And even though it's the most expensive,
Yeah.
even though it's the most expensive,
We've got the premium one here, and I'm pleased. I think you're right. If we were to go and do that route once more, or even if you were riding another 100 miles up a motorway, it's the one I'd choose.
are there any other bikes that we don't have here?
Good point.
That you would say might make a case for being a better sports tourer?
Again, I'm sure there'd be several of you screaming, "Where's the Yamaha Tracer?" Well,
Hey, Michael, where's the Yamaha Tracer?
yeah, we could have covered all four Japanese manufacturers or mainstream Japanese manufacturers here, couldn't we, all in one go? Mainly, it's not here because I wanted to reserve it. Well, this is the litre class, so to speak, and I wanted to kind of hold it back and pitch it more against the F900 XR, which is new, well, updated, isn't it, for this year? And the new Triumph Tiger Sport 800 as well, which we'll get another a group test together with those three bikes later in the year. But yeah, look, apart from those three extras, what else is there out there?
Well, I guess you've got the BMW R1250 RS for as long as that is still around, before it may or may not get replaced by a 1300 at some point. I think that's a good sports tourer as well. It's got quite a sporty riding position, lovely engine, but it would be a lot more expensive than the three bikes we have here. And I do get the sense it's probably on its way out soon.
Yeah, otherwise we're going to get into, because these are all 17 front and back, aren't they? There's a range of bikes out there because we could start getting into adventure bikes, and then there's a whole world out there. Is there anything else that I don't think there's anything else that we've missed out that's sort of mainstream or shouting at us loud and clear?
So.
I'm sure if there is, we'll be
we'll
told in the comments.
Yeah, so I might regret saying that. Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, boys, for your time and efforts and expertise today. Thank you for paying attention. I hope you're still with us. We've got to talk about BikeSocial membership. Of course, that's your bag, isn't it? We've got the best part of 160 different rewards and offers and discounts and deals and all sorts of brilliance. So if you're not yet a BikeSocial member, why not? It's free if you have insured your bike directly with Bennetts. If you haven't, then it's £6 a month or £60 a year. What else have we got to mention? Bike Club. Come and join us at Bike Club. It's our online community forum, I think is probably the best way to describe it. Any questions answered by the experts, and that's not necessarily us. But Bike Club. Search BikeSocial Bike Club. And otherwise, come find us on Facebook. That's another one. So if you're willing to come and kind of get involved again, it's a Facebook group. It's called Bennetts BikeSocial, and we're always on there every day.
You're on MySpace.
Yeah. Good. On that merry note, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Take one.
You mentioned the IMU. Do we need to talk about any more about that? No.
Can't do the maths.
Hello, Michael speaking in a garage with some paperwork.
Hello, Andy speaking.
Oh, about 130, yeah.
I'll talk to that one, but I'll come straight in here.
Because you're falling asleep.
And then we brought the bikes in.
Hey!
Take two.
So yeah, we'll do tyres.
Hola todos, bienvenido a Bennetts BikeSocial. Soy...
Cut.